April 10, 1917. Grace Fryer walked into the United States Radium Corporation factory in Orange, New Jersey. She was 18 years old. The job paid well, 3 times the average factory wage. She had 2 brothers fighting overseas. She wanted to help the war effort. By the end of her shift, she glowed in the dark. The work was considered prestigious, elite. The radium dial painters were the top 5% of female workers in America. They painted watch faces for soldiers. Tiny numbers. Delicate work. The paint contained radium, a miracle element discovered by Marie Curie 20 years earlier. Radium glowed. It fizzed. It gave off a mysterious blue-green light. Doctors used it to treat cancer. Companies put it in toothpaste, cosmetics, tonic water. People believed it cured arthritis, insomnia, high blood pressure. They called it liquid sunshine. The girls felt lucky to work with it. The factory hired hundreds of young women. Most were teenagers, daughters of immigrants, Italian, Polish, German. They worked in bright studios, clean rooms, not like other factories. This was skilled labor, artistic, technical. Each girl mixed her own paint in a small crucible. Radium powder, zinc sulfide, gum arabic, water. Then she painted, watch after watch. 250 dials per shift, a penny and a half per dial. The brushes were made of camel hair, fine and soft. After a few strokes, they lost their point. The supervisors taught the girls a technique. Slip the brush between your lips. Point it with your tongue. Dip it in paint. Paint the dial. Lip, dip, paint. The girls asked if it was safe. Management assured them. Radium was harmless, beneficial even, good for your health. The girls believed them. By the time they left work each day, radium dust covered everything. Their hair, their skin, their dresses. The girls became known as ghost girls. They glowed in the dance halls at night. They wore their best dresses to work so the fabric would shine. Some painted their nails with radium, their teeth, their faces. Party tricks, their dates loved it. Their smiles knocked people dead. Meanwhile, in the laboratory upstairs, the men wore lead aprons. They handled radium with ivory-tipped tongs. They knew something the girls didn't. By 1920, some of the ghost girls started feeling tired. Tooth pain. Nothing serious. Just little things. In January 1922, a dial painter named Molly Maja went to the dentist. She had a toothache. The dentist pulled the tooth, a routine procedure. A few weeks later, she came back. The wound hadn't healed. The next tooth hurt. He pulled that one too. Both wounds grew larger. Blood and pus seeped into her mouth constantly, made her breath foul, made eating torture. Molly kept losing teeth, more and more. The dentist found an abscess on her jaw. It needed to be removed. He cut away the gum to look at the bone. The bone was gray, sickly, wrong. He touched it gently with his finger. The entire jawbone crumbled in his hand, like ash, like dust. Radium had eaten through it, destroyed the calcium, shredded the collagen, left nothing but splinters. That summer, they removed the rest of Molly's jaw, pieces of her inner ear. By September, the infection spread to her throat, cut through her jugular vein. On September 12, 1922, at 5 in the afternoon, Molly Maja drowned in her own blood. She was 24 years old, days before her 25th birthday. The doctor wrote syphilis on her death certificate. Molly wasn't alone. Other girls fell sick. Grace Fryer's spine collapsed. She wore a steel brace from neck to waist just to stand. Another girl's legs shortened and broke spontaneously. Tumors grew, bones fractured, teeth fell out. The worst part came at night, when the girls looked in mirrors. Their bones glowed from inside, radium embedded deep in their skeletons, shining through their skin. Ghost girls in a new way, a terrible way. The company denied everything, said the girls had syphilis, rheumatism, anything but radium poisoning. When girls tried to get medical help, company doctors examined them, lied about the results, said they were perfectly healthy. By 1924, 50 women were sick. A dozen had died. The company knew the truth. In the early 20s, they hired Harvard researcher Cecil Drinker to investigate. Drinker visited the factory, found it saturated with radioactive dust, workers glowing, no safety precautions. He wrote a report, recommended immediate changes. Company president Arthur Roeder refused to accept it. He forged a new version, changed the findings, submitted the fake report to New Jersey officials, said every girl was in perfect condition. When Drinker learned what happened, he published the real report anyway. The factory closed, but the damage was done. Pathologist Harrison Martland proved radium poisoning was real, developed a test, measured radioactivity in living and dead dial painters, found their bones riddled with radiation, honeycombed, full of holes. He explained how it worked. Radium disguises itself as calcium. The body absorbs it, stores it in bones. Then the radiation destroys everything from inside. Pierre Curie once said he'd never want to be in a room with pure radium. It would burn his skin, destroy his eyes, kill him. Martland proved that internal radium was thousands of times worse, even in tiny amounts. The radium industry tried to silence him, failed. Grace Fryer finally found a lawyer willing to take her case. Raymond Berry, a young attorney. Grace was dying. Her doctors gave her months to live. 4 other women joined her. Catherine Schaub, Edna Hussman, Quinta MacDonald, Albina Larice. All 5 were in their 20s, all dying. The press called them the living dead. The company kept asking for delays, continuances, hoping the women would die before trial. The statute of limitations in New Jersey was 2 years for workplace injuries. The company argued they were exempt. Too much time had passed. The girls could barely attend court. They needed constant medical care. Some couldn't walk. Some couldn't raise their arms to take the oath. They testified anyway. Elizabeth Hughes, a physicist from the National Bureau of Standards, measured the radioactivity in their breath, testified that all 5 had ingested deadly amounts of radium, that scientists wore protective gear when handling it, that the company knew the dangers. The testimony gained worldwide attention. Marie Curie herself called the practice criminal, said she was shocked the government allowed such carelessness. Facing terrible publicity, the company settled out of court. Each woman received $10,000, $600 per year for life. Medical expenses covered. It was a fraction of what they deserved, but it was something. It was acknowledgement. Grace Fryer died in 1933. Catherine Schaub died the same year. They were both 33. The fight wasn't over. In Illinois, dial painters were dying. Catherine Wolfe Donahue led them. 15 women against Radium Dial Company. The company stole bones from autopsies, buried test results, lied to workers, fought every step. Catherine developed a tumor the size of a grapefruit on her hip. Her jaw fell apart like Molly's. She held a handkerchief to her mouth constantly, absorbing pus, picking out pieces of bone. Too sick to stand, she testified from her deathbed. Collapsed during the hearing. Finished anyway. The Illinois Industrial Commission ruled in the women's favor. The company appealed and appealed, all the way to the Supreme Court. Catherine Wolfe Donahue died the day after Radium Dial filed their next appeal. She was 35 years old. The Supreme Court declined to hear the case. The lower court ruling stood. The women won. The company paid. By then, most of them were dead. The lawsuits changed everything. For the first time in American history, employers were held responsible for worker safety. New laws required protective equipment, safety standards, proper ventilation, radium handling protocols. During World War II, a new generation of dial painters went to work. This time, they wore gloves, used mechanical presses, never put brushes to their lips. The work was safer because of the Radium girls. Radium paint continued until the 60s. The last factory closed decades later. By then, 4,000 women had worked as dial painters. Many died. Many more lived with chronic pain, broken bones, cancers. Congress passed the Occupational Safety and Health Act, created OSHA, the agency that protects workers today. The Radium girls' lawsuits laid the groundwork. The factory sites are Superfund toxic waste sites now. In Ottawa, Illinois, a playground across from the old studio sits chained and abandoned. The ground is still contaminated. In Orange, New Jersey, where Molly Madja worked, the same. Some of the Radium girls are buried in Rosedale Cemetery. Their graves don't glow anymore. But when Molly's body was exhumed 5 years after her death, it was still in good condition. Every tissue, every bone, radioactive, glowing. The company won for years, made millions. The girls painted 250 dials per shift, earned pennies, lost their lives. The courts ruled it was nobody's fault, but the men upstairs wore lead aprons. Corporate profit chose silence over safety, chose lawsuits over lives, chose money over truth. The system protected the powerful, punished the vulnerable, until the vulnerable fought back. It still happens.